Hello and welcome to week 13 of the challenge. Might also be called week 2. We're counting them down, so it's week 13. And it's a sweltering day here in Los Angeles and Pasadena, but I'm up for continuing if you are. So this week we're going to talk about impressions, specifically first impressions, because an audition's a short space of time. You have to make your mark and make it quickly, and you want to accentuate all your lovely positive features of your playing and minimize any weaknesses. Now, the truth of the matter is everyone has strengths and everyone has weaknesses, even great players. And part of being a smart auditioner, as perhaps opposed to a smart performer in general or recitalist, is being able to show your best in just a few minutes. And in fact, first impressions are really made in a few seconds, 10, 15, 30 seconds. And you'll know this if you ever have the experience to judge something subjective. That doesn't have to be an audition, doesn't even have to be musical, but if you've ever, for example, watched an Olympic sport like ice skating with the sound turned off. You're simply watching a performance. We're so used to hearing the commentary. If you mute that and actually watch for yourself and think, what kind of impression is this making? Not necessarily how would I score this, but how does this person seem? Do I feel confident in them and their abilities? And the same thing goes through the minds of committee members listening to people auditioning. Now, we have fairly objective things we have to do as violinists. We have to play in tune. There's a subjective element to that, but basically in tune is in tune. We have to play in time, in rhythm. Those two things are really what, I hate using the word eliminate, but yes, if you have 150 people playing an audition, a violin audition, 90% of them are going to kind of fall to the bottom based on pitch and rhythm alone. I will put sound quality in there. In fact, I think that's the most important one of all, but that's a little bit more subjective. So, with those three main factors together, I'll talk about sound quality first, pitch, and rhythm. You want to put your best foot forward. And we're going to talk about that this week with the solo selection, because the solo selection is almost always the first thing played in an audition. And for this audition, that is the preliminary audition, that is the Mozart Concerto, and you have 3 to choose from, numbers 3, 4, and 5. So take a little look at each one of those so that no matter which one you're selecting, you'll have an idea of the kinds of things that I look for as a committee member. And I want you to open your ears to a few things. Let's start with the third concerto. We'll just do them in order. And all these general things will apply to all the concertos. The third concerto is the one that starts with a chord. And you'd be surprised how many people play that. And it starts already with an unpleasant scratch. That would be the number one thing to avoid. I don't like to think about playing it safe in general. I think you should perform the way you're led to perform, and you should make a statement. But you should know where your limits are, where your instrument's limits are. And I'm going to talk about this a lot as far as tempo and sound and articulation throughout the challenge. So it's not playing it safe to pick a stroke and a sound that's going to sound good 100% of the time. That means that you choose a certain amount of, when you set the bow, and I do believe it should be from the string, this chord, you choose a speed and a pressure that are moderate. You don't need to really get the bow really set on the string. Just a little contact and release is enough, even though it's a chord. The other big thing I see in this is a bow speed that's way too fast, and the bow may drift out all over the place. I love it when that chord's released right in line with the rest of the bow string. So not like this, but like this and up. So great sound quality means great sound quality on every note, even the fast ones. And that's another thing that I often hear. The bow starts to drift or slide a little bit rather than... These grace notes can be played any number of ways, so I'm not even going to get into that here. That little trill, I do think you should plan what you're going to do. I do a turn. You could fit one more in if you wanted. The last notes of phrases in Mozart almost never hit. They're almost never emphasized. So I hear that surprisingly often. Much nicer. Same for the chord. These notes, those need great sound quality. And here's an example, and we'll find them in the fourth concerto as well. Notes that could be either on or off. So you don't want to be caught in no man's land. Just now they were off, definitely off. I'm not setting the bow for each one of those. They're just rebounding. It's equally valid to play them on the string. There I'm playing the same kind of length, but I'm leaving the bow on the string for control. What you don't want is to be caught in the middle, which can happen if you've been undecided or if you've been going back and forth. And then you have neither sound nor control. So pick one or the other. Same with the last note there as well. These little 16th notes, they're not so little. To keep the bow in the string as you play them, so that they all have time. I should say now a word about bow speed. One of the things that distinguishes great players from not so great players. Great players are able to use fast bow whenever they want, when they think it's appropriate. So something like this. I'm using quite a lot of bow, not so much pressure. It sounds more ordinary if you use a boring amount of bow. Or an even bow speed, rather than that has a fast bow right in the beginning. Again, time for all those notes. A lot of times they get rushed, which means that they can't have quality. All right. Let's move on a little bit to the fourth concerto. That's moving on a lot. And remember, you only need the exposition for these concertos. And with these three Mozart concertos, it's pretty obvious where that ends. There's a tutti at the end of the exposition. So really just 3 minutes of playing. That's why you have to make your mark pretty quickly. In the fourth concerto, we're starting up higher, has some treacherous intonation potential, And so that's the first sign of great playing, is when the intonation is pure. Find your note, but find it once. You know, if that's going to be like that, that's enough. You don't need. We see and hear that all the time in auditions. Find it however you find it, and then that's it. Same idea of moderate pressure and bow speed. You don't need, because bad things can happen. These are the ones that could be either on or, sorry, those need to be off, so don't get caught in the middle. I mean caught in between on and off. It's these that could go either way. As long as they have direction and a shorter length, I can see them being on the string. Otherwise, but halfway in between is dangerous. Slurred 16th notes in Mozart have the potential to get uneven or worse. So you can practice them separate. Mix up the slurs, dotted rhythms. What you want is just as if it were one bow. There I'm using amount of bow to give my direction, so little bow, more, and most. And here's the big ice skating moment. He's coming up to the big run. And again, it's just a series of notes in a scale. And you can practice them as calmly as you like. Most important is that sound. And I think it's great to build yourself those little checkpoints. As long as they're not too obvious. You can practice that slurred. That last note again, not to hit. This, too generous with sound. You'll see how connected the bow is to the string, rather than, which is choppy, you know. And character here, this too comes from bow speed. This next passage, the challenge here comes from the string crossings. So the bow, keep it solidly in the string so that all the notes come out. That's the simplest way to think about it. The arm level determines what string you're playing on. And then if you like to take it off the second time, I can take it more off than that. That can be up to you, but it's not necessary. And now a brief look at the fifth concerto, which is the only one of the three that starts with a slow introduction. So here, vibrato, the kind of vibrato you use, and the choices you make in direction are all important because there's not virtuosity right in the beginning. You can watch my video for soft starts at the frog for help on starting that note if you like. Here it's perfectly fine to play a little cadenza if you like, or not. But the shape, especially if you look at the first few notes, I don't have to use the whole bow. More, and now the whole bow. Too often, the whole bow is used without needing to. Now, the start of the allegro again, bow speed. I'm going to focus my vibrato a little bit more. That would be a nice idea. Those notes are so often rushed, so just to have quality all the way down. So much of this, I think, of the character comes from the bow speed. Here too, rather than just fingering I have always liked there, and then 1, 2, 4. Saves you from having to shift in the middle of a run, in the middle of 16th notes. There to give time for the notes. People have different bowings in their parts there, that's fine. Or where you shift is up to you, but don't be in a rush to play the passage or to end it. And don't hit the last note. So these are some of the things that I hear over and over in auditions, and some of the ways in which you can make a great first impression and set yourself up right for the excerpts and the rest of the preliminary round. Thanks so much, and I look forward to seeing your videos for week 13.